May 17, 2022. Allegedly, according to that thing we call a calendar.
Chili.com.
Revelation through conversation.
So it's just a slightly early start. Okay. I meant to start a little earlier with Christie. Christie was ready to go, but I wanted to finish that point because I really do feel like that is something to keep an eye on. However, it is also good to take your eyes off of all that. Okay? And this is why I've got Christie Aphrodite with me, because we need to get back to what works. And you know what always does seem to work its way out one way or another is nature itself. And, you know, there are things happening all the time. Things do live, die, grow, and regrow, and so on and so forth. And so are the sands of time through the hourglass and the days of your life. Goofiness. Okay, I want to go there. You know why? It's time for another edition of the flower power discussion that we had last time. And I'm really, really happy to have Christie Aphrodite with me. Of course, mytrueessence.net and christieaphrodite.com. You could be listening to the show over there right now. And you could also call into the show. 319-527-5016. We'll get to you as we can and go about as long as we need to. How about that? That's about the breadth and width of said plan tonight, okay? Christie's with me. We're going to talk about flowers. Last time, we talked about roses and dandelions a lot because I thought that was a good starting point. But maybe, just maybe, we should have went in other directions, and more than happy to do that. But before we do, Christie, how you doing tonight?
Oh, man, I am so excited to be here. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And oh my God, the garden, like, flower power is here for sure. And there are, it just brings me so much joy to go out there every day and see a new bloom. And like last week when we finished the topic, I'm like, I'm going to write down the flowers that I'm harvesting this week. But that was before I knew there were going to be like 20 or something ready to go. I thought it would be easy. Oh, they'll just be like, you know, maybe 5 or something. And so, yeah, it's pretty exciting. And I'm excited that you and hopefully your listeners enjoy this topic because we've just been, you know, not told the truth about a lot of things. And flowers, whether we know anything about their medicinal content or not, they just kind of have a tendency to make people smile and make people happy. And so, at least here at the Ozarks Church of Nature, I can't help but smile.
Well, I got to say, you sent me a bunch of pictures. And I'd love for you to, if you have a second, drop some of them in the chat room at Ochelli.com, which also is mirrored at christieaphrodite.com. So if you're over there listening, that's cool too. Don't care where you're listening, actually. You can put some of those flowers there, though, and show them a couple of those pictures if you don't mind. I know you took a bunch, but, you know, it's nice to see colorful things just emerging. And all that. Now, some people would say, well, you know, that's more of like a womanly thing to get into the flowers and all that. But, all right, I get it. It's more traditionally like that. But if you're among those things growing and you're just enjoying the colors and the smells and the interaction with other creatures like the bees and things like this, I mean, I don't know how you can't get a little piece of calm or, you know, just joy out of being around that stuff, no matter who you are. So there's that aspect. But, yes, indeed, you can eat a lot of this stuff. You can use a lot of these things. As a matter of fact, seems to me as though even if you were a Christian, which, you know, look, I'm not judging anybody either way, but even if you are, you read your Bible, it kind of tells you, the plants are there for you. And if you are meant to be on this earth, whether you think it's, you know, the old man in the sky decided you're supposed to be here, it's natural design, it's an accident, whatever, fact is the order of nature is fairly intelligent. whether it was formed
Just
by
a
an
little
intelligence
bit.
or not, it's fairly
and I
intelligent.
would go so far to say, on the Christian thing, I would say, especially if you're Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well, you would
yeah.
think so.
And I know that the obvious point you're making is that, they trust the actual sorcerers and deny nature, which is God for the most part. And that really sucks. But I hope that the more we are able to educate people about these, little beauties that happen to work, I mean, it's not like if they did, I mean, come on. There's more reports of effectiveness on, say, red clover than there is about any vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, see, that's the thing.
There's more reports of the effectiveness of rose than there is of any aspirin, or, you know what I'm saying? So...
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, almost anything that you could possibly need, all right, and this is a weird thing to say because it sounds really odd to some people, but almost anything you could need, not just for disease, not just for, nutrition, but I mean, you want to make paint, you want to make dyes, you want to make, anything. Rope. I love the segment I did some time ago with the guy who Alan Kay, who did the Alone series on the History Channel, right?
Oh, nice.
And he did a whole thing about making rope basically out of the plants right in front of you, so that you could do things, you could accomplish things. Not just good for one thing. And obviously, I know nobody likes to clear cut a forest, but use the trees, use the plants, use the things that are there, and also allow them to be as well. You live with nature, you live among nature, you don't have to consume it, flatten it out, and, pave over paradise, man. It's not necessary all the time. There's a lot of things that get buried when you do that. And, in a lot of cases where you see, okay, there's massive flooding and all this, it's because somebody screwed with what was there to begin with.
Right.
Which was doing the job. Those annoying things that are along the coastline that sort of kept the sand in place. People didn't like those, so then they had to bring in artificial things to try and not let the erosion happen. I mean, and that's just along the shore. And why do I bring this up? Because I grew up around it. I used to watch every year as they fought with nature as opposed to working with it when they had access to the Atlantic Ocean in New Jersey. It was like, why are you guys doing this instead of just embracing all the stuff that, doesn't... There's like a little island almost, and sometimes it's an island and sometimes it's like an isthmus that comes off of New Jersey, right? Which is called Sandy Hook. You ever heard of it?
Oh, I have heard that name once before.
Yeah, but see, the Sandy Hook most people think of is in Connecticut, and that's,
Yeah.
okay. But there's a little place called Sandy Hook in New Jersey, and you can look it up, and they're constantly battling erosion. They talked about it, and even historically, when I was in school, they talked about it and said, learn about your state, and some time ago when the United States was founded, this was probably 4 islands. And gradually it came together because naturally things started to collect with the grass and stuff would start to collect the sand. Now, I know this sounds irrelevant because we talk about health on here, but what I'm saying is that instead of battling with the loss of land, with landslides, with, problems because your air sucks, okay, because you got no trees around and all this, sometimes you got to live with the nature and not just try to dominate it and terraform everything. And that,
right.
And that includes...
It's not even close to irrelevant. It's completely relevant because it all works together, right?
That's
so
the
we
key.
Can't eliminate nature and then get mad at nature when we destroy parts of her and, you know, act like we're smarter, right? We're not. So when we do dumb things like that, or build below sea level, or on cliffs, or destroy all the mangroves, or whatever, then yeah, we're gonna kind of suffer consequences.
Well, and the other thing is, look, if you go in there and you make it unlivable for the natural order, the natural order will generally make it unlivable for you.
Right, mirror, mirror. That's kind
Right.
of all of life, right?
Well,
Like a
right.
big fat projection of whatever we're not paying attention to or not appreciating.
Or people could talk about karma, where if you harm other people, gee, harm tends to come your way. I mean, it's just the way it is. So back to this thing about flowers, where they are pretty and all that stuff. I mean, if you pull up all of the natural growth around you and then wonder why, you know, your grass can't survive, and you've got, you know, bugs coming in trying to, you know, or worms coming into your property, or this kind of thing, it's like, well, the reason is they're coming back in to rebuild what you destroyed one way or another. And I mean, eventually, you ever see that series, by the way, just really quickly before we get back into the flowers, you ever see that series that it's like called something like After Man?
I haven't.
Well, what they do is they show you, like, okay, to pick a place anywhere, throw a dart on a map. Okay, let's just say Austin, Texas. All right, and I was reading about Austin earlier, so that's why. But they would go to a place like that and say, okay, here's what the buildings look like, here's all the man-made structures, and then they go through like a CGI model, and they say, this is how long it would take for nature to reclaim this area. And this is what would happen. And here's where the animals would move in, here's where the insects would move in, this and this would be adapted by these creatures, these buildings would fall down, all this stuff. And they talk about it up to a point where they go, okay, now at this point, no trace of what man did would be there if it was undisturbed by men. And by men, I do mean, you know, people. So they do that all in one shot, and they show you this, and I always thought it was fascinating, because it's like, that shows you what the monumental reality of the great creations that we have is, right? The asphalt jungles, which I'm very familiar with, can be reclaimed by the natural order if we do not continue to, well, maintain the terraformed operation. Eventually, in other words, nature will fight back and take it back. Now, I'm not saying I'm an Agenda 21 supporting, you know, rewilding everything. I'm not into that. You know, I am into live where you want to live and do the right thing, but you have to consider that at all times, the natural order is still going to battle with whatever it is, genius idea somebody came up with, whether it's a wooden house or it's asphalt or anything else. Eventually, the planet can reclaim it. And that's that. So when you look at this stuff like flowers, right, which are in yards and in, you know, along the roadsides and just everywhere, okay, because a lot of things flower, trees flower and plants flower, and then you get bushes that have flowers, and they're all really interesting, and they all actually have a purpose. And again, when left undisturbed, they usually come together. And again, you know, sometimes people bring things into new places and stuff like that, and it changes the equation, changes the matrix of stuff, right? But again, the things that naturally occur in an area that you are consistently part of because you decided to live there might have a relevance to you directly. There's a weird statement, in fact. I've noticed that,
I like that.
People that live on a certain parallel, right? And I do mean parallel. Don't argue with me about the globe and flat earth, please. But point is, we can agree about the parallel lines on the map, okay? If you're on a certain parallel and your dietary needs, okay, if you're there for a long time, your dietary needs, most of the things that you require to deal with an illness, most of the things that are better for you because you are simply in that ecosystem are along that parallel. even if they're, some miles away or whatever else. It's a very interesting thing. And this is why I've had more than one person tell me to try and eat seasonally. Yes, you can and you can save, and I get it, and I do that. But generally speaking, if there's any sort of problems or if you want to try and get to a natural equilibrium, it's usually real close. It's usually right where you are. That's the stuff you're supposed to use. Curious thing there about that, because it almost seems like it's planned out. But anyway, not getting into the God question again. The flowers you see around you are meant to draw your attention for a reason. So with that, Christie.
Great point. And so true. It's absolutely. In fact, when I do sessions with people, I'll ask them what they have growing in their yard. And all the time, I kid you not, they have exactly the medicine they need there. And so that's the thing, and that's why I'm thankful that you want to do these shows, because I think the more people know that their food and medicine and everything we need growing right around us, then things like food shortages or formula shortages or things like that, supply chain disruptions, aren't going to be that big of a deal, right? Or lack of access to so-called health care or affordable drugs, right? If you know what's in your yard, chances are you have everything you need right there or within a certain vicinity. And I'm glad you also touched on the seasonal thing, because I agree with that. In fact, just today, Chuck, I am cooking the last tomatoes of last season. So like at the end of the season, I don't get enough to say maybe can salsa or do this or that. So maybe it'll be 5 tomatoes a day or something like that. So I'll just throw them all in a bag in the freezer. And then, when I'm craving tomatoes or whatever in the winter, which is usually never, that's why today it's like the middle of May and I'm barely thinking, okay, it's time to start getting these nutrients here. So my diet does change seasonally, and it has definitely changed environmentally, like or geographically, when I've lived in different places. And so, we should always source our home first, right? Instead of, mainstream and even alternative media. They'll tell you about the new superfood or this or that, or you have to get some herb from, India or China or something, and South America. And everyone has great herbs, but guess what? We have their equivalent, for the most part, here, right? So if you are just getting started in herbs or wild foraging or whatever, start local. Start with what you have, because that's what you're always going to have to turn to. That's what's always going to keep reproducing itself, no matter how many times the county people mow down the sides of the roads, right? That echinacea, speaking of flowers, is still going to come back. The vervain is still going to come back. Your honeysuckle, right, we talked about last week, is still going to come back. The daisies, the yarrow, all of these things, the clovers, the dandelions, and you mentioned environmental, like pollutions, toxins, they're not taking care of the land and such. Well, these flowers, herbs, they plant themselves to heal the land, So when you're talking about, say, a dandelion and all of the different vitamins it has, which we covered last week, it's not, it doesn't just give it to you when you drink it as a tea or a tincture. It's giving that to the soil, or in the dandelion's case, that long taproot is pulling up the calcium and other minerals from, feet way below, that nothing in your, in your vegetable garden that you're going to plant is going to be able to acquire, right?
Right. I have, just so you know, I have a text question, and I also have a caller. I had another caller, but they went away. You can call back in, 319-527-5016. But I just want to let you know that you have a caller and a text question. So let me know when you want to get to those.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, right now.
Okay, well, right now then, the text question, since I have it in front of me, is, okay, let's get it. All right, there it is. We often have the urge to pick all the flowers in our yard and try and use them, but I am told that some flowers should be left to fall back into the earth. Do you have any guidance on this about, harvesting too many or not enough? That's the way the question's worded. Sorry.
Okay, absolutely. And that is a good question. So obviously you don't want to decimate the entire population of whatever herb you have, right? So there's kind of like a general rule of thirds. Like a lot of foragers or Native Americans and such, they won't take more than a third of what's there. But in cases where you're going to use the root, and dandelion keeps coming up because it's so damn versatile. Like you can use the leaves, the flowers, like all of them all season long. And the more you clip them or any other herb, the more it's going to grow, right? But you wouldn't want to harvest the root until after its growing season, where all the nutrients go back to the root instead of, in the season when it's producing the flowers and the greens. So yeah, here, there's American ginseng that grows, but they have laws against it, right? Mm-hmm. Because people harvested too much and made way too much money, and now you can't find it anywhere because they were selling it for the money, right? So I would always caution, have respect, give thanks, whether you're picking one leaf, one stem, one stalk, one flower, or 100. Too much. So too much would be if you harvest it at all, right? And when you're picking flowers, dandelions again, for example, when I harvest them, I don't pick every single one because I need the bees and to keep coming back, right? They need food or they're not going to be here. So if you just be mindful of that. And how much herb do you actually need for, say, an entire year or an entire season? If you have it on your land or whatever, I'm sure you can grow plenty, right? So yeah, just leave some for nature, for the animals, and even in your vegetable garden. Like when I plant, you pretty much just want to expect on giving 30% away, right? So it's kind of the same. Like you can harvest a third from nature, but you have to let nature harvest a third from you, basically. I just barely put that together right now. I guess because I never talked about those two things at the same time. Right. But I think those are general guidelines. Have respect, do unto others, plants included, right? Do you want somebody clipping off all of you and your children so you can't grow? I always like to leave seeds to grow on the plant, right? So I won't harvest every single bee balm or every single dandelion flower or anything else. I'll let it go to seed there and drop or scatter it wherever it wants to grow next season. So just be mindful that you want things to keep growing, not to destroy them.
Perfect.
I hope that answered your question.
I hope so too. Doug, I hope that answered your question. Meanwhile, we have a caller and another text question. So I'll go to the caller next and then ask the text question, just so you know, heads up, is about mushrooms. Which is also useful, extremely useful. You have to know what you're doing, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's get to the caller. And you're on the air.
Yeah, hello. I was just wondering, do you have any favorite dandelion recipes for alcoholic beverages?
Well, I may have known some people that make like dandelion wine and dandelion beer, but I personally have not gotten into that myself. However, I do know a really easy like homemade hooch recipe where you just basically need the flowers and the herb and sugar, yeast, and water in a bucket.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That does the trick.
Pretty much anything you add like sugar to and allow to ferment. I mean, even Amish friendship cake, right? So there.
Yeah.
And alcohol in itself can be good medicine, right? With, like, say, blackberries and soothe your cough. And, of course, I make tinctures. So, although I'm not making the alcohol myself, I am definitely using alcohol as a menstruum for them.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Dandelion wine. I didn't even think of that.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah.
There's a couple of really good. Yummy. There's actually a couple of really good YouTube videos on it that I've seen that pretty much state what Christie just said, which is you can pretty much ferment anything with the right combination, and some of that might be trial and error depending on depending on what it is you got to work with. And like you said, you could be as simple as a bucket. I mean, we talked about a couple different things with the tinctures that, like I told you about the pantyhose thing, which does work.
I love that, Chuck. I'm so impressed by you.
And stuff like that.
To make the hooch, or
no? That was for tincture to strain to strain. But the thing is, you can do it a certain way so that you don't end up having to strain it at all. If you want to use that, now it's not quite the most natural way necessarily, but you end up with the same kind of result. Christie had better ideas on that, but I would tell you to listen back to that show where she talked about it and explained a couple of different ways to do it, or to even do it, not straining it, just kind of going with it and leaving some of the stuff in there, depending on the effect you're looking for. Right? I mean. It doesn't always mean that you got to have, like some people like the orange juice with a bit of stuff in it, where it's not just a liquid. You know what I'm saying? And it's more useful. So, depends on how you want to go. Anyways,
well, it reminded me when she said the blackberries thing. It reminded me of how my grandfather used to make blackberry brandy, and he actually made blackberry with moonshine too, I think. Which I think was illegal even back then.
Yeah, the Italians in Jersey City, I don't know how it started, but a lot of them started using strawberries. And they made a strawberry wine that, it's a little weird. Like, if you're not expecting it, but you try it, and it's got...
No, it sounds intriguing.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Especially, it's very sweet. So it's a sweeter wine, but they used to make that, literally in the old bathtubs,
I'll just say the old timers here do it with everything, okay? So blackberries,
that's what I'll be doing when I'm an old timer.
Dandelions, nettle, everything,
dandelion
every
wine.
Fruit, every flower, lilacs even. Yeah.
You see, I don't know how to work with the lilacs. Is there something different you got to do with that, or is it just you need a lot because it's kind of a thin, spindly sort of thing. You know, there's not a lot of bulk to lilacs.
There's not. So it's, if you were gonna make a wine, you would have to have a really big bush or tree.
A lot of lilac.
That's probably been blooming for 10 or 12 years to have enough just to maybe make like a gallon wine.
Yeah.
That's why they don't have like lilac essential oil and other true, like real from lilac flower fragrances.
It's just not bulky.
It's just almost impossible to capture.
It's just not. It doesn't have a lot of girth to it. So it's kind of hard to work with. Dandelions, though, are way more substantial than lilacs. So
right, and they keep coming back. They don't have just a 2-week season,
right,
like lilacs do, or red buds or something. So I've never yet been able to harvest enough to do more than just 1 or 2 things. In fact, my lilacs this year, I started my enfleurage and I dried a few. And with the enfleurage, you're supposed to pick new blooms every day and squeeze out the old ones, right? And so I got to do that for a couple days. And then the rains came in and washed them all away. Then I had another day where there were like not very many left. And then the rain came again and washed every single one away. So no more enfleurage, no tincture, no syrup, no anything. And kind of the same thing happened with the red buds. So nature, you know, the season is very short on a lot of these things, but not for dandelions, right?
No, dandelions, and knowing I see where the region is that this caller is, and I'll tell you, dandelions are plentiful where you are, almost in any part of that you know, because you're in the Northeast, and those things everywhere. You know, but again, the other thing to be
drink them or eat them.
Yeah, well, you could. And the thing about them is, I would just be cautious though, because you're in the Northeast, that you don't harvest from a place where the dandelions are exposed to a lot of, say, car emissions and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, like, you got to be careful where you harvest them from there, but plentiful they are.
That's true.
So, yeah, I mean, that's sound advice, right, Christie?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm still getting some dandelions right now, but the season where you could go out and like fill a colander is kind of over, at least for me in the Ozarks. So maybe being up further north, you know, maybe you're just in the middle of your season.
Yeah,
now,
you should still be able to harvest them. Yeah, you should still be able to harvest them because
pollen and stuff, you know.
Yeah. But
anyway, I don't want to take up the phone line, but I just want to say, Christie, you're doing fantastic work, and you make me feel good every time I hear you. And Chuck, I hope you feel better, my friend. And you made me laugh like no one else has made me laugh in a long time doing the news earlier. So I just wanted to let you know that.
You probably liked it when I started complaining about the way the guy wrote the article, right? I'm like,
no, I loved it all. The subway does suck.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yeah, like so much you shoot the sandwiches.
Well,
I was drove into a tree. I just hope you feel better. And Christie, you're awesome. And
thank you so much.
Really,
I appreciate you calling.
Really appreciate you, man.
You guys take care.
Anyway, you too. Anybody else wants to call in, 319-527-5016. So with that, before we run into something else, Christie, somebody did ask about mushrooms. I know it's slightly off topic, but kind of not. Because while you're out harvesting your flowers, you could very easily encounter a lot of different types of mushrooms, couldn't you?
You absolutely can.
So, because mushrooms are all over the place all the time. Now, is every one of them fit to eat? Maybe not, but it really depends. And obviously, mushrooms usually grow where things are rotten and stuff like that. So, I mean, you know, but then again, there's all kinds. And actually, that's what the text question is about. And they want to know if you have a go-to guide. Okay. Sorry, it takes me a second to roll it back. All right, here's the whole thing. My friend makes money and also has tons of mushrooms. They go out and pick them every couple of days. And they won't share with this person exactly what mushrooms are good, which ones are expensive, or anything like that. So what they're asking is, do you have a go-to guide, something that I could put in my pocket and take with me, because I see mushrooms all the time and I don't know if I should harvest them or not, and which ones are good for me, or which ones are medicine, or you got "or" in here like 5 times, dude. Yeah, so basically, do you know of a like I say a book, a paperback or something, or a guide that somebody could take with them to know which mushrooms are which, help them identify mushrooms?
So I am not a mushroom expert, but I will say this. Generally, if it's growing on wood, it's good. But I would never eat a mushroom or consume in any way that I did not 100% positively know. And so since it hasn't really been my field of study, I circumvent to, I do have a mushroom expert friend. And so if there's something I want to know, I always divert to him. And you can find him on Facebook. And if you are on Facebook, I hope, let me see what his Facebook name is.
Well, there's a few. Look, there's a few methodologies, and I would.
They have an app like they do with for plants, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Look, as much as I hate smartphones and stuff, there are apps where you can take pictures of something like mushrooms, and it should identify it. Now, if I'm you, I double identify. I'm not just going to trust the AI. So I do.
Oh yeah.
I do know that, like a previous guest I had on, Richard Allen Miller, wrote his guide to magic mushrooms, which includes identifying a whole bunch of different mushrooms. But there are many mushroom guides that are just sort of really in the nature section of a bookstore. If you go to a bookstore, go on Amazon or whatever, I'm sure there are pocket guides that are relatively accurate and should help you be able to identify these things. But I would say use everything to double or triple check this stuff, because the only piece of advice I would have, because I'm not a mushroom expert either, is exactly what you just said, which is, yeah, generally speaking, if it's on wood, it's good. When you got stuff that kind of grows in moss and all that, usually it's okay. But again, the exposure to to wildlife, the exposure to other toxins which may cause the mushrooms to grow, sometimes it is the action of getting rid of something from a organism that causes mushrooms. So they are,
and then, like
literally,
the Amarita family, for example, some might, make you feel like you're going to fly through the sky with reindeer, but then there's other parts of the same family that will kill you, or at least give you organ failure, which is even worse, because then you have to live with it.
Yeah, that's the thing with mushrooms.
So get a local book always. Because, like, for example, where I lived in the Pacific Northwest, like reishis and things were growing everywhere. And out here, I haven't seen any, but turkey tail, they're pretty easy to identify, and they're always safe. And, chanterelles, I think, are pretty easy to identify. But yeah, local book or online YouTube videos, Facebook groups. But as Chuck said, and especially if you're on like a Facebook group or on an AI app or something, don't trust the first thing that you see.
No.
Doubly, triply research it yourself. ask someone else. And I know a lot of mushroom people, they don't want to share. You know, I totally know what you're saying about that.
Yeah,
They're better than us. You know what I mean?
Well,
they don't wanna,
but you know what? Some people
have the scientific name for everything. They like look down on us. So yeah, I know it's hard to get your friends to kind of tell you where they are, what they are.
Yeah, especially because you know what? I've actually known a couple of people. Like I used to have a guy who came on the show that I got into an argument with who used to go out mushroom harvesting for half the year. And I've also known a guy locally here in Georgia who that's what he does when he's laid off. He's in like a seasonal profession. He gets laid off for like 3 months a year. And during those 3 months, he literally goes out and finds these mushrooms that apparently are expensive, and he can sell them to certain restaurants. And there is stuff out there that you would pay a lot of money for that might be just down the road from you. Okay? But again, I would always use extra caution, especially with this, because the structure of the thing, again, respect what it is. The structure of the thing, it draws out certain elements from usually problematic situations, like the idea that, okay, after a forest fire, certain types of mushrooms will grow out of the dead wood. And again, most of them are good to eat with the wood and everything, but depending on what really, was the fuel in said forest fire or what might have burned around it, you could have issues, So you got to be very careful about these things. And yes, you can find them everywhere, but like you said, even the more fun groups of mushrooms, are part of the same family that, yes, indeed, could be toxic. And some people would say that, I've heard this explanation. That's why you get that, it's actually toxic. It's your brain's being poisoned. And it's like,
right.
No.
True.
On a level, yeah. But here's the thing. If you know what you're doing and you can double and triple identify these things, you can safely eat them and use them for other things. The fungus is good for other things. Again, for various healing problems like burns and stuff like that, where you have difficulty where the skin doesn't heal and scarring and stuff like this, some fungus is good for just that. Because it literally draws out of other living things that have either died or are in strange conditions. It draws certain elements and concentrates them. So it's just something that, again, I would not go into, by trial and error because.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely not as safe as with weeds growing in your lawn.
No, weeds, see the flowers.
Or flowers. You know what I'm saying?
Flowers and weeds are much easier to identify. And even if you have a minor misidentification of something, it's not usually as bad. Again, all caution must be shown at all times because, as per usual, and as you always say, you have to consider the rest of what's going into your body, your own conditions, stuff like that. I mean, we've talked about on this show, I must have mentioned it 100 times, that grapefruit juice, which is great, might not be great for you if you're on a certain medication. It could kill you. Garlic, which is one of the, standby. I mean, I love garlic. Almost never enough garlic on anything, okay, as far as I'm concerned. But if you have certain things in your body or certain conditions, garlic is not good for you. So, simple stuff like that can be problematic. So you got to be aware of what it is you're putting into your body, of course, and what it is that you're attempting to use for what. And I would be doubly cautious with mushrooms because they are... They're a different kind of organism. They're not like a plant, okay? Like I said, they're sort of a collective growing organism that grows off of something else. So you also got to consider what it's growing off of. And hey, look, I mean, all of us have seen mushrooms growing in a dilapidated building. I wouldn't eat the ones that come out of your drywall. You know what I mean? Just saying.
Right. Yeah, use common sense, of course.
Yeah.
For sure. And also with the whole contraindication thing, I just want to put a reminder, even though flowers may sound benign, but I used to just think that only white clover was high in coumarins, which would be unsafe to take if you're on, say, blood thinners, right? But I'm actually finding out that they're in almost everything out there, and a lot of things we've talked about and might talk about, like, roses and evening primrose and, dandelions even. So as benign as they look or sound, do not take any of this as medical advice on any level, and in fact, do not even try it without thoroughly evaluating your own situation, talking to your doctor, researching. Again, go to pubmed.gov. You can research contraindications and such there too. Mm-hmm. So, don't just jump into any of this. And I also want to say, if you're new to herbs, flowers, etc., wild edibles, you want to just start with one at a time, right? Like, get to know dandelion first, then you can add echinacea to it after you try echinacea all by itself, right? Or plantain, or rose, or gardenia, or jasmine, or calendula, right? Whatever it is, try them singularly first before you ever put them together. And that way you'll know what's helping or what's not helping, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you make concoctions like what I make, for example, and you don't have experience in those, and like one of the 50 or 3 ingredients you could have had an unknown allergy to or something, right? So just always do one at a time. Go slowly, baby steps. And since we've talked so much about dandelions, I feel like on every show, there's so much nutrition and minerals and benefits in that if it's going to work for you, you're going to experience it in one day, whether you're looking for diuretic effects or, literally any organ strengthening. So I think that's good advice that we should always remember. Don't just jump into it. Don't just start, playing with 15 different flowers today, unless you know for a fact that they are safe for you and your particular circumstances.
Because everybody is an individual. And, one other thing, even though you're saying most times, yes, you can experience changes right away. Sometimes people, they take something and they think, okay, I did it once, it didn't work. There are occasions where you got to be patient too. You didn't get to whatever it is you're trying to make. I mean, whether it's, look, we could go from weight loss. Let's just say somebody's saying, look, I want to, because that's a popular thing a lot of times, is that, I want to take something for weight loss. And especially I brought up the fact that, I'm 50 now, so I'm in that age where men definitely develop a problem getting rid of weight that they might have not had a problem with in the past. You didn't get to whatever point it is you're at in an hour, okay? So you take something and an hour later, nothing changed. Be patient a little bit. You got to let the stuff...
Right. All your problems aren't going to be solved like that. I'm just saying, my very first time drinking dandelion tea, I felt a difference. And keep in mind, I was in a wheelchair at the time, right? So I had a long ways to go, but that's why I call dandelions the gateway drug. I knew from my first time by the next day that, holy crap, that this is something. I want more.
Now, somebody did say in the chat room that they're a little leery of PubMed.com.
Of course.
Now, I would say always exercise caution about anything on the internet.
Everything you read. But when you see the same thing verified by multiple independent researchers with no ties, right? So PubMed and academia and Science, all those other ones, they post all of the names of the people involved in the research or the testing, and if they have any declared ties and such. So it's easy to see, at least for the most part, right? And on PubMed, you'll find reports saying that, you know, echinacea is a powerful antiviral and proven effective, like repeatedly, for colds and flus. But you can also find a report from somebody else saying that it's not. So, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, do you believe every single word? No. But see what you can verify multiple times. And don't do this because PubMed said so, right?
Right.
Utilize the free food and medicine in your yard because it's important to you to learn what it is. And PubMed is not the only source. I bring up PubMed because they are the same government that tells us there are no cures for cancer, diabetes, autoimmune, Parkinson's, etc., right? So that's the only reason I bring them up and use them as a source. Just so which one are you going to believe, right? The news government or the published research, peer-reviewed scientists that is on a government site?
No, I got you.
So yeah, use caution, just like with mushrooms and foraging and everything else.
Well, I will say this about PubMed, and again, this may not go over well, but here's the thing. Fairly consistently, I can get information that is not steered there for profit. So, you know, I always go for that, where somebody is freely sharing something that they're not making money on. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, I know some studies, yeah, they get paid to do them and this and that, but the thing is that there are people that honestly are just exploring and trying to figure things out, and it's been fairly consistent as one of those places where, yeah, even though it doesn't fit with the official narrative, you have information that's available there and you can look at it for yourself. So, and you got me reading it, by the way, because I never used to pay attention to it. I was like, yeah, okay, government website, never mind. But
right, no, but I think it's important to know that the government that publishes all this research is the same government that's trying to sell us stuff that on their own research there proves what they're recommending publicly causes the diseases that, you know what I'm saying? So all of it's there. Like you can say, you know, Fauci at one time said, oh no, that's preposterous. You never take a vaccine for a cold or flu. And then, you know, there's supposed different research now. Or the mask thing. There were reports 10, 20, and more years ago about how masks are actually dangerous and, you know, but then all of a sudden in 2020, 2021, they have reports stating the opposite, right? So, yeah, anytime you're dealing with anything, it's going to be like that. And even herbs are the same, right? Because herbs can have a stimulating effect on some people and then a sedative effect on others. So, yeah, don't just read one report and think you know everything, right? And again, you're not really going to know everything or anything until you experience it yourself, right? Because reading all that stuff is just words. But your experiential knowledge, applied knowledge, is where the wisdom comes. So, yeah, like I said, to me, these are the same people that shut me down and erased me from archive.org and said I was delusional because I cured myself. So and erased my site. So you're damn right I'm going to use their words to tell you about the efficacy of things that they've lied to us about for ages.
It's a curious thing, too, because a lot of times you'll find that it literally, the stuff over there will fly in the face of what it is they're recommending. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is interesting to me. I mean, if you're willing to show the other side, that's something. You know, that is definitely something. And I'm not saying, look, I can think about this and I could contort in all sorts of directions and say, oh, they're trying to mislead us this way. You know, I get it, but at some point, you got to have some sort of guideline to begin to work with, and it's just a fairly decent database is the only point there. So, we're, can you believe this? Almost done with the hour.
We never even got started.
Never really got started. We answered some questions, though. I know we went into mushrooms for a minute, but I thought that was necessary. Why don't you give us a couple of things that, you know, just a couple of things that you harvested this week? Because you did put out those interesting pictures there in the chat, and maybe you could talk about some of the more colorful ones there. Let's see, maybe I can take a look at them myself, roll it back. Which, by the way, if you're listening to this later, you can always roll back the chat at Ochelli.com and take a look at the pictures, the conversation. Not all of it is on topic. I know there was some discussion there about hemp and how much weed costs where somebody lives. But anyway, there's all kinds of stuff there. But let me see. Here's a good one, actually.
I'll tell you the flower I'm most proud of that bloomed this week.
Sure.
And I did post a photo in the chat. It's a white peony. It's just, oh my God, so fragrant and so gorgeous. I've been looking forward to this all year. But I saw somebody posted something about the shots causing heart issues, and peony, according to published reports in 2019, that peonies are proven effective or it has cardioprotective effects. Let me pull.
So let me ask you a question. Is that the one that's like a white burst, which has like this yellow sort of looks almost like it's scattered in the middle?
I think you might be looking at the white clematis. The peony kind of looks, it's open. Oh yeah, there is a little yellow in it, kind of rosy-ish, but much more petals.
Right, like an exploded rose, but like with a little bit of yellow scattered in the middle.
Yes, like an exploded rose. That's a perfect description.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to visually match it up because I know nothing about this flower. So.
Oh wow! So the smell, I don't even know how to describe it. Actually, kind of a.
Is it perfumey? Is it? Yeah. Good.
A rose and jasmine-ish. Like, it has a little sweetness. But I'll just say the results of this particular study, they found it to be, let's see, antioxidant, let's see, hyperlipidemia, cardioprotective effects, well,
it sounds to me
antithrombosis.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like what you have here is something that generally has an effect on the circulatory system altogether. Because if you're talking about, lipids, or if you're talking about, circulation, thrombosis, obviously, is about clotting and stuff like this, where you have problems.
I think that's kind of important to know right now.
Yeah, I mean, yes, very much so. So what I'm thinking is that this is the kind of thing that in the right circumstances and in the right person could promote cardiovascular health. So that's the thing. It could, but you got to check on it. Like you said before when you were talking about the one plant which has, sort of blood thinning effects. That might be good for somebody who needs a blood thinner and doesn't want to take that other stuff.
Exactly.
Depending,
and there's also,
but,
again, red clover, white clover, nanny berry, dandelions, again, right?
Right. We keep going back to dandelions.
Also,
But,
I don't know, do you know what wisteria is?
Yes, I do know about that, but I want to hear a little more about this plant for a second, because I'm thinking to myself now, is it just the flower, or because in some cases the flower is better for use? And is this something that you would dry? Is this something that you would, how would you use this? I forgot the name of this plant now, this white exploded
Peony.
rose.
So traditionally, the roots are used in like Chinese medicine.
Okay.
So, but you can definitely use the flowers, and pretty much the only way to preserve the scent would, kitties. Okay, sorry, I have kitties trying to crawl all over the keyboard now.
Of course.
The scent would be either through like a oil or maybe a witch hazel or something.
Okay.
But yeah, so it allegedly, according to government resources and peer-reviewed scientific multiple reports, it can prevent blood clotting, kill cancer cells, just like every other plant we've talked about in this series, and of course act as an antioxidant. Some people also use it for like minor pain relief, like as in menstrual cramps, coughing, and then as you can also use it for skin issues like psoriasis, and then some people claim that it can be used as an anti-epileptic. So I don't have personal experience in that, so all I can do is refer you to sources that say that.
Just really quickly though, is this the kind of thing where I could take the stem and the root and probably grind it up and sprinkle it on food, say? Is it that kind of thing? Or if you were going to harvest the root, you could definitely dry it and then grind it up into a powder and sprinkle it on things, or chop it up super finely or grate it or whatever and make it as a tea. But you can also use the flowers too. Okay.
And you could just eat them plain, or you could definitely throw them on a salad, right? Something delicious like that. You can also any of these flowers you can put in like vinegar, right? So if you make salad dressings or put vinegars on your vegetables or something, the vinegar is a really good menstruum to be able to preserve the medicinal properties of all these things basically we've talked about, from the lilac to dandelion, rose, etc.
Right. So listen, since we are running low on time though, I want to address that, and I guess we'll move on. Maybe we'll do Flower Power 3, because we didn't really get into all the flowers.
We didn't, and there were so many in bloom that but that's okay. I mean, there were so many, my brain was like, I don't even know what to talk about. I'm just going to let Chuck ask.
Cool. So we'll pick a couple more flowers for next week, if that's okay, and go through those. Like this one I never heard of before. This is new to me. But here's an interesting thought, is that, again, I go back to, I got to be honest with you, it's very much like my Irish ancestors did not show me much when it came to cooking or stuff like this.
Yeah, I hear that.
But my Sicilian ancestors, on the other hand, and Sicilian families, some of them, did interesting things that I never saw other people do. And one of them was using the vinegar, with a bottle that had like almost like a strainer on the top of it, and they put some of the flower petals from different things into the vinegar, and that was part of the vinegar. Never saw the process done, but you brought it up as salad dressing, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, that's just like what I saw my aunt do. And I don't know exactly how that works, but she seemed to indicate to me, now that you're bringing it back to my memory, that there were a couple of things to mix in together. Of course, at all times, as we said before, make sure that you're putting into your body, into your food, what it is that is best for you. Everybody's an individual. But just saying, methodology-wise, she had a way of just sort of letting this stuff float in the vinegar. Or some of it would settle on the bottom or whatever, but when you turn the bottle over, some of the stuff would fall down. And it would be like, it would be caught in the strainer. And the vinegar, she had this big bottle of vinegar. And not just the clear, white vinegar everybody uses from the store all the time, by the way. There's many types of vinegar. But either way, vinegar, as you said, is one of those things that sort of draws things out. Like, that's why they used to tell you to put it on a sunburn, because it would sort of draw out the moisture that was lost on the surface. It would bring it up so that it would help to heal the skin. That's what it does. Vinegar is kind of like a drawing sort of component in a lot of things, right?
In cooling.
In cooling and all that. So, but the thing is, when you put, basically petals of flowers in it, it takes some of the properties of those flowers and puts it into the vinegar. So, am I making any sense here?
Yeah. So, vinegar tincture is almost as effective as an alcohol tincture, and the only reason I'm saying almost is because it doesn't last as long, right? But vinegar in itself is a preservative, so you would make it the same as you would with alcohol, and you could use the fresh plant, the fresh flower, the fresh herb, the fresh whatever.
Yeah, that was the thing,
that
is
you
that
want to add to your vinegar, and it will extract all the same, vitamins, minerals,
but this is the thing,
etc.
If you're using a lot of vinegar on food, right, like you're using it as a salad dressing and you eat a salad all the time, right, as part of a salad dressing, then that means you can change out those petals all the time and put different things in there and have it draw out some of the properties of whatever it is you're putting in there. So you could have a constantly changing, slightly different flavor, maybe slightly different effects, again, seasonally. You might put different things in there, right?
Or multiple bottles, right?
Well, I'm thinking one-dimensionally because I only ever saw my aunt with one bottle. But
well, I have a dandelion vinegar. I have a redbud vinegar.
Oh, so you do this. You actually do this. Okay.
I actually do this.
Yeah, okay. No, no
Isn't
problem.
that why you wouldn't be talking to me if I didn't actually do this, right?
No, I'm doing that for the audience, Christie, to be like, hey, she actually does this. See,
I actually do live my word. I know it's a weird day and age, but yeah.
I know, but it's just, but it's a great thing. I want people to visualize it, you see, because you visualize it, you might want to try it. And the thing is,
it's literally that easy.
Yeah.
Clip your herb and stick it in your, hopefully, apple cider vinegar, or, a good kind, right? And it'll keep, if you put it in the refrigerator, it'll keep forever. But, and I guess it depends on what your storage situation is, but I don't see why it wouldn't last on the shelf for a year. Books probably tell you 6 months just to be safe, but if you're not going to consume it in 6 months, put it in the fridge.
Well, that's the other thing is, you could take some of this stuff too and kind of like can it, but in a jar. When I say canning, I just mean preserving it, There are decent canning methodologies that don't necessarily involve a jar, but honestly, mason jars are great things.
Oh, I put everything in mason jars.
Right.
All my dried herbs, oils, tinctures, vinegars, right? Everything. I do put little plastic wrap on the top of the vinegars and tinctures, just because, vinegar is an acid and I don't want it to react with the metal of the top.
Right.
or erode it or whatever could happen. But yeah, see, every single thing I do is so simple. Anyone here can do this. I'm not like some special person with special powers. Really, the only difference is that this is my love and my passion, and I do it. I've planted a lot here, but I have also tried to utilize every single thing and encourage, birds to poop more seeds of every kind. And
Right.
I hope one day I'll be able to use all the thousands of species on the land, but I'll probably never even know what everything here is.
Well, you'll never run out of. Here's another thing about plants and herbs. Quite honestly, even the best expert, and this is no offense to you or anybody else, Christie, but the bottom line is, it is almost endless the amount of things you could explore and learn, because the beauty is in the complexity. It's not just in the appearance, but there are so many different things that you can learn, and who knows, you may even discover something that perhaps is rare information or is not known by a lot of other people by working with nature as opposed to against it. christieaphrodite.com, mytrueessence.net. Now, Christie will gladly sell you something if you need it over there. But honestly, if you just get in touch with Christie, especially if you got some sort of issue and you're looking for ideas about natural ways to address it, Christie will take her time and consult with you if she can. And if you're available at the same time, that kind of stuff, this is what she'll do. She'll even tell you about stuff that's, guess what, for free, laying right at your feet. Of course, you'll happily sell them something too, but it's not necessary.
Or just teach them what they already have on hand and how to make something, to where you don't even need much. But yeah, my stuff is the best. Like if you, because, okay, so Chuck, I have been wanting to, do you use herbs when you cook? Like basil or oregano or things like that at home?
I do, yes.
Yeah, so
Not
I'd like
always,
to send you some of mine.
Ooh.
I'm not sure if you've seen the video of the comparison between my herbs and other herbs, but if I send you some of mine, then you'll be able to see with your own eyes.
Of course.
So tell me what herbs you use, and I'll just extend this to anyone else, like anyone who orders from the site. If you're into herbs, like say basil, oregano, lemongrass, I've got buttloads of mints, things like that. I'll send you thyme, rosemary, whatever. Tell me what herb you like, and I'll send y'all a gift. But Chuck, tell me what herbs you like, and I'll hook you up with every herb I have that you'll use.
Okay, well, look, I'll give you a list, and I'm going to do that off air, okay?
Yeah.
Because we have run out of time. But again, mytrueessence.net, christieaphrodite.com. You can get an education there, even if you don't talk directly to Christie, because there's videos and examples, and yes, indeed, there are products available. If you don't want to talk to Christie, how about that? But I would, because you'll likely learn something that you didn't know previous. Like I just learned tonight about it. I've never seen that flower before, to my knowledge.
Wow.
So there you go. Anyways, the Ochelli Effect is done. I want to thank Christie for being here with me, and also you guys for listening, because no matter where you are, who you are, when you are, I am merely Ochelli, and all of you are indeed the Effect. Good night.